Yes, finally we have a version of the Samsung Galaxy S20 flagship from them without the Exynos here in Europe, and I'm talking about the Samsung Galaxy S20 FE 5G. It's a bit of a mouthful, but this version has the Snapdragon 865. Until now, Europe got pretty much, well, screwed over with the Exynos, which was selling for the same price, but didn't have that Snapdragon 865 performance. But now we've got it, and of course a flat screen finally in this new fan edition of the S20. So here is what we get inside the box. We get a bit of paperwork just inside here. Now I won't go through all of it. It's just paperwork there, SIM tray tool, 15-watt charger, and our USB to Type-C cable. That's it. So we do not get a case, we do not get a faster charger. So this is only 15 watts, and it will take approximately over 2 hours to fully charge this phone. Now I'm reviewing phones that sell for half the price of this phone that includes 65-watt chargers, cases, and also Type-C to 3.5mm adapters. So we don't get any of that in the box here. Samsung have cheaped out a little bit. So we have a plastic body with this particular one that I know a lot of people are going to be disappointed with. It doesn't tend to pick up fingerprints too bad. It has a matte finish to it, and depending on what light you actually look at it, it can sometimes, this red version, look a little orange in color. So yes, tapping on it here, okay, plastic, and yeah, I'm a little disappointed. I would have preferred to have had Gorilla Glass 5 on the back of this one. So there is a camera, of course, glass module right here that does protrude a little bit. There's a metal frame around the outside of it. In my experience, this does chip easily, so you want to get a case for these phones pretty much ASAP. Dual tone LED flash. This right here is an 8-megapixel camera, and it does have 3 times optical zoom, optical image stabilization, and electronic. Main 12-megapixel camera. This is f1.8. It does have dual pixel face detection autofocus, and then right up the top is a 12-megapixel ultra wide. This one has an aperture of f2.0, and the frame around the outside, metal, okay, metal buttons here as well. They do feel good. Nothing really feels too cheap, apart from maybe the plastic on the back may annoy some people. Okay, the price tag being €700 for this particular model. But finally, I do have the flat screen that I've wanted for some time with a Samsung phone. 120Hz refresh rate with this one as well means it is very quick and smooth. Now, they've done something a little silly, if you ask me, with the front-facing 32-megapixel camera, f2.0 aperture. It has this golden or silver ring around it, and you can see that it stands out, and I don't like this. I wish it was black. It just stands out way too much, if you ask me. So tapping it here, you can see very vibrant display, Full HD Plus resolution, looks really great. I'm going to look at that in a little bit of detail soon, but I wanted to show you the bezels. Bezels around the outside of this screen, yes, they are not the slimmest top and bottom. So in-screen fingerprint reader here, always on display, and it unlocks pretty quick in my experience. I haven't had too much of an issue, apart from when my fingers are a little bit damp or wet. It does take quite a few attempts then to actually unlock this one here. So we have a brilliant looking screen on this one. It's maybe not at the same level as their flagships. In fact, it isn't. It doesn't have the 1000 nits plus of maximum brightness. I'm measuring with this particular screen about 605 nits. That's measuring whites. And that is good. You can still make it out in direct sunlight. That's the main thing. It's okay, but just not as bright as those ones. So display has some options in here for our what they call motion smoothness. Now by default, it's 120 Hz, which is very, very smooth. Looks great. If you're coming from a 60 Hz phone, like for example my Samsung S10 Plus right here, still love this phone. I think it's one of their best. Snapdragon version, of course. You do notice that difference. It is massive. Now, one thing that is missing, even at 60 Hz, there is no DC dimming option, okay? So you look in here and go, okay, where's DC dimming? So I'm going to demonstrate here. This is not going to actually look this bad in person, but for some people it may. When you adjust the brightness to lower levels, pulse width modulation, flicker is coming through this banding, and this is where DC dimming would completely kill this off, but it tends to only work. I think it only works at 60 Hz, but we don't have that option at all with this phone, which is slightly disappointing. So, being a flat panel, finally, I do really like this. We've got no color shifting on the edges. It's all uniformed, looks really, really great. Deep blacks, it is an amazing screen, and the UI performance is just so smooth and fluid. The Galaxy S20 FE 5G here, of course, runs One UI. This is Samsung's One UI 2.5. And as I mentioned before, performance is great. Super fluid, really fast and smooth, but it's not 100% flawless. I have noticed, and I've been trying to capture this on camera, that occasionally when I go to uninstall a very simple application, bit of their bloatware, that it would suddenly freeze up on me for about 1 to 2 seconds. A complete freeze, like almost a mini micro lockup. And that should not be happening. It also happened when I was installing an application. With this processor and with the 6 gigabytes of RAM I have, we shouldn't be seeing this at all. Now, the gestures, as I mentioned before, very good to trigger, multitasking, nice and smooth, great, it's fluid. What about the internal storage speed? So we have UFS 3.1, really quick, look at that sequential write and reads. But the main important one here, of course, is the random reads and writes, and they're over 200, which is excellent. So really fast storage, and that is really excellent to see. We're going to have that, of course. Now, let's just jump in here to a little bit of performance. So Antutu, really good score here. If you still believe in this benchmark, it's going to get close to almost 600,000. If you've got the 8 gigabytes of RAM, expect maybe slightly higher score here, but it doesn't make too much of a difference. Now, the GPS, it doesn't seem to have dual carrier frequency. I did a bit of a test, and I'm not seeing any level 5s in here for carrier frequency. So it does mean it still sees a lot of satellites, but you're not going to get a better accuracy than 3 meters with this, unfortunately. Now, wireless performance, however, very, very good. In fact, it is the fastest I have seen yet on a phone, getting over 1,000 megabits per second. This is just raw transfer speeds with my router. This is on wireless 6, of course, to get these speeds. Fastest I've seen, really good. And then a very good average speed in my point downstairs. Quite a bit away from my router, still doing an excellent job there. Now, battery life, you're going to see probably about 6 hours of on-screen time. 120 hertz takes a huge hit on the battery. Now, if you use 60 hertz, then expect to get about maybe 7 hours to 8 hours tops. This is best case scenario here. I was in Twitter a lot of social media, a lot of screen on time, so it's actually not faring too bad so far, probably because of the Full HD Plus resolution. Widevine Level 1 cert is here, of course, so Netflix and Full HD. Comes with that application, Amazon Prime Video as well. Camera 2 API support is level 3, so if you want a Google camera port later on in the future, then of course you can hunt around and find one for this particular model to get perhaps improved photography, maybe not. And free storage on first boot is going to be over 100 gigabytes. I'd actually already installed a few apps when I took that screenshot there. And of course I am on the latest software version, the latest One UI 2.5 update. But they probably still need a few more updates to fix a couple of bugs I have encountered. One I mentioned just before, that stutter, and one's to do with electronic image stabilization, which I'll get onto later on in this video. Now, one other thing I almost forgot is you do get a lot of bloatware with Samsung, okay? They cram on Microsoft that you might actually use these applications, but you might not, so there could be bloat. But let us make the choice of what we want to actually install on a phone here. So there's quite a bit of bloat there. Now, what I have noticed that with some of this bloatware that you do get, like Spotify, the list goes on. There's so many, Facebook as well, that if you do go and uninstall some of it or disable it, when you update the phone to the latest firmware, it adds it back again, some of those applications, which is really quite frustrating and annoying. That's what happened to me. So I had to go along here and go, hey, you know what? I removed this. Why do I have to uninstall it again? Oh, it was that firmware update added it for me like I wanted it. And onto audio quality. So sadly, yes, this is missing my beloved 3.5mm headphone jack, but you can use a 3.5 to Type-C adapter, which doesn't cost much at all to manufacture, but Samsung sadly does not include it in the box, no. Now, Bluetooth audio, tested out some Bluetooth audio, runs well, no problems, very good. Call quality good, signal strength as well, very good, no issues. I'm getting the LTE band 20 at my house, I'm getting onto 4G, no problems. And very good loudspeakers in this. So we have one in the earpiece and the one down here, very loud, they've got a little bit of bass to them, and overall I'd give it an above average rating. Quite good loudspeakers on this phone, but here's a sample at 100% volume. So gaming on this phone, very, very good. As you'd imagine, Snapdragon 865, definitely no slouch. And this is Shadowgun Legends on the ultra-high setting. Now, it will not run at 120 frames per second. It's down to game support from the developers. We need to find out and run games that have an unlocked frame cap. For example, like Real Racing 3, Grim Valor. Those are two off the top of my head that do. Mobile Legends. But this performance is really good, but I'm a little bit more concerned about the thermal. So what I'm going to do now is play this particular demanding game and probably a little bit of Call of Duty as well for 1 hour. And we'll have a look at just how hot does this get. Is it going to get alarmingly hot, or will it stay under 45 degrees Celsius? So here we have the thermal imaging camera, and I'm going to check right in the middle, this hotspot. It has been running now for 1 hour, 1 hour of heavy gaming, Shadowgun Legends, and Call of Duty, up to 41 degrees right here. So it does feel hot to the touch. And on the back, you can see there is this hot patch right there. And let's have a look and see. It feels a little bit warmer actually than the front of the screen. So this is almost 42 degrees. Now, as long as the phone is under 45 degrees C, when gaming for 1 hour in my ambient 25 degrees, I'm happy. So thermals check out here. They're actually good on the S20 FE 5G. So I'm capturing this with the inbuilt screen recorder app, and this is our stock camera application. So this is the ultra wide at the moment. So this is 0.5, and this is 1x, which is our main lens, and the 3x optical. I'll show you video samples and camera samples shortly. So you can do a digital right up here to 30x, which looks like an oil painting mode. I'll just take a quick photo to demonstrate there that I wouldn't actually personally be using that, but some people do find it handy. Video mode, so when you're shooting on the go, you can swap over to the ultra wide and the 3x optical as well, which is good. And tapping here on the left is our super steady mode, and under more is where you will find hidden away our pro mode. So the pro mode, unfortunately, it's only for the camera. We used to have a video pro mode, which I used to love back in the day, but it's gone now, so that's sad to see. But a lot of settings we can change in here. We've got our ISO, shutter rate, etc. is all under there. Now getting out of it, just tapping back here, back into more, you find food mode, the night mode, which I'll show you some examples of. So let's take a look now at some samples shot on the S20 FE 5G. Now with our front-facing camera, this one 32 megapixel sensor can shoot up to 4K 30, which I'm currently shooting in 4K 60 frames per second. Now across all of the video settings, I don't seem to have an option, at least 1080p and 4K, to use and enable the electronic image stabilization. Image stabilization simply is not working. You can see it shakes all over the place, and this is really disappointing. So I hope Samsung can add this in an up-and-coming firmware update. That would probably mean it would crop in a little bit closer like this. I don't think too many people would mind, because right now it just is way too shaky. You're going to need a gimbal to get nice vlog quality. On the upside, however, we do have good audio quality here, great sounding microphones, I think, on the S10 FE here. So we can shoot 4K 30 frames per second and 4K 60. Right now it's 4K 30, matching my particular review here. So we've got very nice electronic image stabilization. I'm going to jog ahead now just to demonstrate how well it works. Now I have noticed, I'm showing you a clip now which is a bit different, but here the ultra wide video actually bugged out on me and started jarring around, and it just looked awful. So there's a bit of a bug that Samsung does need to correct. But back onto this main footage that I'm looking at now. So this is the ultra wide. Tapping now, this is the main sensor, which is 12 megapixels. The ultra wide's also 12 megapixels. But this one here has some optical image stabilization as well. This main sensor has dual pixel face detection autofocus. So holding up my hand here, you see the focus has no trouble locking on. It's very quick, it's very accurate, great autofocus. It's actually better than the newer gen sensors, I find, because those new ones, they lack the dual pixel face detection autofocus. So tapping once more, right at the top here is now our 3x optical. This is an 8 megapixel sensor. I can tap and hold here and then go to 10x zoom, which is now looking a little terrible to be honest, and then 12x max here, which just looks too blocky for me. Now let's take a look at the stills. So this is a shot of my cat Vera using the main sensor. Moving objects can blur sometimes a little bit, but I decided to, when she was still a little bit, use the 3x optical camera. And as I zoom in, take a look at all the details that's captured here, with little bits of dirt around her face, the fur, the fine tiny little hairs, all captured. Very good detail from an 8 megapixel camera. This is now the ultra wide. It wasn't ideal conditions, a bit overcast. The weather's kind of packing it in here at the moment. But if you do zoom in, 200% crop now, and look at the edges, it's actually okay for an ultra wide 12 megapixels. Main camera now, looking at part of the castle wall that has a little bit of wall damage. Now I am going to zoom in, use the 3x camera now,
and you can just make out this little hole behind that Arab style window. This is a cannonball hole. So I'm going to go over to 20 times now digital, which is not amazing because it looks a little bit like an oil painting, or water painting. And you can see a cannonball lodged in the left there. That's still there. It's been there for about 200 years. So you can still capture some detail. Now, portrait shots. Absolutely love the portrait shots that you can get with the live photo mode with the Samsungs. They've toned down the saturation a little bit, but overall zooming in here, stitching is good. It has my daughter's face and my cat Vera's face in focus well, and stitched around them, their arms and, well, my daughter's arms and around her hair. Not too bad. I mean, it's not perfect, the stitching, but overall, I think a pleasant photo has come out from that. So a little bit of sun was out, testing the ultra-wide here again, and the good results. I do like the results we get from Samsung cameras. This is the main camera again, in sunlight, and of course, easy conditions here. It does a great job. 3 times optical again, but look at all the details you can capture. So it's definitely handy. I think 3 times is a good one. Instead of 2 times optical, you can just get a little bit closer. Good for portraits. Main camera again, but I'm going to crop in here 200% just to demonstrate again that you get a lot of detail. Even though this isn't a 64 megapixel or 108 megapixel camera, it still does, I think, a very good job. And here's a shot in a museum, well lit, of course. Again, just look at the details captured here. And a good blur in the background. It's not too bad. It's not a lot at f1.8. And a few selfie images here. So not bad at all, I think, from the 32 megapixel camera. Now, it does blur the background quite well. It makes me look a little slimmer here for some reason. And the skin tones, well, they're okay. And you can use a slightly ultra wide shot here, but only slightly wider shot for the front facing camera. But here in that internal shot indoors in that museum, it does look a little bit off the white balance here, I find. And as for our night shot, Samsung does an excellent job. Remember the days when Samsung was actually lagging behind? Huawei really stepped up. But at Samsung, they have stepped up with their night mode, and very pleased with these results. So most of the time, if you keep the scene detection on, it will automatically use night mode. But I turned it off with some of these shots and then used the night mode. So it captures a lot of detail with the sky. It's not perfect. There's a little bit of grain, but overall pleased with the night mode on the S20 FE 5G.
Now to quickly recap here with my time using this phone, that overall it does have a reasonably good build quality. The metal frame around the outside does feel premium, but the plastic backing doesn't really. We've got wireless charging, NFC, some very decent cameras, although they do have a little bit of a bug. The ultra-wide's got that electronic image stabilization bug. The UI, I also saw a little bit of a glitch when you uninstall things. It can freeze for about 1 or 2 seconds. I mean, a complete, absolute lockup. But that's nitpicking. This is stuff that firmware updates will hopefully fix. Fantastic screen quality, even though, yeah, the brightness is 600 nits, it's still sufficient to be able to see it in direct, bright Spanish sunlight here, so I don't see it being as too much of a problem. And of course, the 120 Hz, super smooth, super fluid. They have done a really good job on the optimization of this. Fast UFS 3 storage. The GPS works well, and the wireless is one of the fastest wireless speeds I have seen when connected up to a wireless 6 router. Very, very good there. Now, the 4,500 milliamp hour battery is reasonably large, but of course 120 Hz takes a huge hit on the battery. And I'm talking you'll struggle, some people will definitely struggle to get 6 hours on-screen time, maybe 7. But if this was the Exynos version, you're probably looking at even a little bit less there. Now 5G, unfortunately I'm not in a 5G area, I couldn't test that out. Charge time with the fast charger, 25 watts, which I think should be, come on Samsung, it should be in the box. I mean, look at the price of this phone. It's 700 euros it sells for, or just under 700 euros. We really should have the fast charger included. Otherwise, charge time with the 15-watt charger is well over 2 hours, and not exactly record-breaking for a flagship spec phone. Other minor nitpicks here from me, that 3.5mm headphone jack, goodbye. It's gone forever, hasn't it, with Samsung? I really wish it was still there. The 6 gigabytes of RAM that this comes with, I think it should be 8. Again, look at the competitors, similar prices or even a lot cheaper. They include 8 gigabytes of RAM. Why can't Samsung? Even with the tablet that I reviewed, the Galaxy Tab S7 Plus starts with only 6 gigabytes of RAM, but the phones, until this one it is, start with just the 6 gigabytes. So great having the Snapdragon 865 Plus finally in Europe in a device and not an Exynos. Maybe Samsung, are they listening finally? Looks like they are. So thank you so much for watching this review. I hope you did like it. Please give a like. share, and subscribe for more up and coming videos. And do check out my review of the Galaxy Tab S7 Plus.